Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, July 27th. This is Africa 54.
Tunisia facing international calls for calm after violent demonstrations following the suspension of parliament and the sacking of the prime minister. While many countries struggle to vaccinate, the race to jab is being compounded by the continued spread of the COVID-19 Delta variant. Congress opens hearings Tuesday into the January 6th sacking of the U.S. Capitol and its perpetrators.
The United States and several other countries are calling for calm in Tunisia after violent protests erupted following the suspension of parliament Sunday. Tunisia's president invoked purported emergency powers to fire the prime minister following months of demonstrations over a worsening economic crisis. Henry Ridgewell reports from London.
A new chapter in Tunisia's struggle for democracy. President Kais Saied's decision to sack the Prime Minister and suspend Parliament, aided by the army, has been described as a coup by his opponents. Lawmakers from Ennahda, the moderate Islamist party and the most powerful member of the ruling coalition, joined protests outside Parliament Monday.
It is an attempt to overthrow the Constitution and the values of the Republican system.
The president invoked emergency constitutional powers as he announced the suspension of parliament. Speaking late Monday, he rejected accusations of a coup.
Article 80 of the Constitution gave the President of the Republic the right to take the procedures he sees necessary in the face of an imminent danger. We ask the people not to take to the streets. The most dangerous thing faced by countries and societies is internal explosion, internal fighting.
But Saied appeared to encourage his own supporters as he joined demonstrations in Tunis on Sunday. They welcomed the suspension of parliament.
We have taken back our country. This is the first time I've gone out to the streets to celebrate.
The crisis has exposed Tunisia's enduring political divides, now played out in violent street clashes. This group attacked offices of the Ennahda party Monday. Meanwhile, police raided and closed down the Tunis offices of news broadcaster Al Jazeera. The political crisis follows months of disputes and deadlock. Tunisia's economy shrank by 8% last year after the pandemic hit the tourism sector. The converging crises have seen frequent street protests in recent months.
Well, there's legitimate grievance behind the turmoil today. There is the COVID-19 pandemic. The growing turmoil is essentially dictated by the numbers and the spiraling death toll, which is the second highest on the continent. And the second is endemic corruption, which the post-democratic system has been unable to cater for.
Washington says it is concerned about developments and is in touch with Tunisian leaders. Tunisia was the birthplace of the Arab Spring in 2011. The latest developments threaten its fragile gains, says analyst Anas El Gomati.
This might be a new development in Tunisia, but it's not a new development in the region. Pro-democratic movements that sparked in 2011 have been challenged both locally and by international actors, most notably Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and even to a latter extent, Egypt.
Tunisia's young democracy is facing its biggest test since street protests ousted former dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali a decade ago. And the outcome could have ramifications across the Arab world. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
At least 57 people drowned on Monday after a boat capsized off the Libyan coast near Khums in the Mediterranean Sea. More than 1,100 have perished this year, according to the International Organization for Migration. So far, bodies have not been recovered from the shipwreck, but survivors included migrants from Nigeria, Ghana and Gambia. IOM spokesperson Paul Dillon told a UN briefing in Geneva Tuesday. The migrants, the majority from West Africa, departed from Khums, presumably to reach Europe. Migrant boat departures to Italy and other parts of Europe from Libya and Tunisia have increased in recent months with better weather. Hundreds of thousands have made the perilous crossing in recent years, many fleeing conflict and poverty in Africa and the Middle East. The Spanish Coast Guard rescued 54 migrants off the Canary Islands Monday night and transported them to Gran Canaria. Edward Barron has the details.
Spain's Coast Guard rescued 54 migrants off the Canary Islands on Monday night and transported them to a port in Gran Canaria. 3 of them were transferred to different hospitals for medical attention, with one in a critical condition, emergency services said. The canoe-shaped open vessel was located less than 2 miles away from Mas Palomas Beach in Gran Canaria, local media reported. Spanish Coast Guard provided masks to those rescued before helping them disembark. Authorities on the Canary Islands are struggling to accommodate a sharp rise in the number of undocumented migrants arriving on these shores. Between January and mid-July, 7,260 people landed on the islands in the Atlantic after making the perilous journey, compared to 2,800 in the same period last year. That's according to the Spanish Interior Ministry. Authorities attribute this increase to the impact of COVID-19 on tourism and other industries in North and Sub-Saharan Africa, pushing many to leave home in search of a better life in Europe.
That was Edward Barron of Reuters reporting. The United Nations says some 24,000 Eritrean refugees are trapped in 2 camps in Ethiopia's Tigray region, cut off from humanitarian aid and where food rations may have run out. Fighting between armed groups has escalated in and around the camps. Mai Aini and Adi Harush, and 2 refugees have been killed this month, according to the UN. However, the UN does not know who the groups involved are. A World Health Organization official says there has been a significant and worrisome increase in the number of reported cases of severe acute malnutrition among children in Tigray. With years of civil war having severely reduced agricultural output in South Sudan, Thai peacekeepers have set up agricultural demonstration plots to teach residents ways of growing and cooking vegetables. David Doyle reports.
Near some farming plots, vegetables are being cooked Thai style. But this isn't Bangkok. It's South Sudan's capital, Juba. Thai peacekeepers attached to the United Nations mission in South Sudan have created agricultural demonstration plots.
We have to figure out these.
The aim is to help residents in the Ye checkpoint area grow food in a country where agricultural output has been severely reduced by years of civil war. Lieutenant Colonel Kaisin Sasuni is a commander of the Thai Horizontal Mechanical Engineering Company.
Even though we are just a little part of United Nations mission in South Sudan, we try to do our best to develop and support this community and this country to be better in the future.
Violence erupted in 2013, 2 years after South Sudan gained independence, and is estimated to have killed more than 400,000 people. The country is dependent on humanitarian organisations for food aid. The Thai peacekeepers carried out training on how to grow various vegetables, both familiar and new to the local communities, as well as demonstrations on cooking with them. Jack, who lives in a camp for internally displaced people, was one of the participants.
When I began doing this, so I had got the knowledge about how to do it, and I'm now even have a capacity to make it by myself.
The Thai engineering company has 3 months left in South Sudan, and on Friday handed the agricultural project, which is on land belonging to the Ye checkpoint police outpost, to the South Sudanese National Police Force.
David Doyle of Reuters with that report. Kenya's first female assistant commissioner of prisons, Wanini Kireri, is changing the leadership landscape in the prison system. Kireri oversees both men's and women's prisons across the country, where her leadership style is being hailed as humane but firm. Brenda Mulinya reports from Nairobi.
Wanini Kireri sits just 2 ranks away from the topmost seat in the Kenya Prison Service. She is the first woman to hold the position of Assistant Commissioner of Prisons and the first woman to hold the position of Commandant of the Prison Staff Training College in Kenya. She joined the Kenya Prison Service in 1982 and has been steadily rising through the ranks at the various prisons she has served. She considers her second stint at Lang'ata Women's Prison, situated in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, as a turning point in her career and the beginning of her legacy in the prison system.
I have seen my journey and what I have done, my impact in Kenya prisons, because I became a change agent, and it takes boldness.
Wanini was the first officer in charge of Lang'ata Women's Prison, where she allowed media cameras into the correctional facility and showed for the first time how female inmates and their babies were being treated. Then, the inmates were sleeping on the floor with limited or no access to basics like sanitary towels and diapers for their babies. Her desire to change the institution was also born out of what she had witnessed as a junior officer.
I also didn't like a lot that was going on. I could see the mistreatment, but now as a very young officer and junior, because there is an officer in charge, there is little you could do about it. And if you became a bit kind to prisoners, it's like there is something that is not right with you.
That kindness, she says, is what has helped her successfully navigate administration duties, even in Shimolatewa, a maximum security prison for men located in the coastal city of Mombasa.
I did not go with that character of the boss. I went with that character of like a mother. As much as I'm an administrator, I went with the character of a mother. So I remember within 1 month, they were all very comfortable. And I would listen, and I realized it's just about listening.
Peter Ouko is a former inmate and now founder of a non-governmental organization that focuses on social justice. He says it's a combination of respecting human rights laws in prison settings and Wanini's personal qualities that serves her well.
You could see Wanini doing this, but she depended on the people below her. So she's a people person, she's a servant leader, and the leadership was not only amongst her staff, it was also amongst the inmates. So it was a holistic approach, and that's why the changes were effected very fast.
Vincent Mapesa, a long-serving prison officer, echoes his sentiments. He has worked under 7 male prison bosses before working with Wanini, and he says the prison is doing much better now.
It is the conducive environment that she has created among our officers. No discrimination. It depends with your ability and your passion on work. And she values every officer under her. So that's the biggest difference, which is different from the former men that we were working under.
Wanini is hopeful that she will continue to climb the leadership ladder and maybe one day lead the entire Kenya Prison Service, as she urges other women not to shy away from taking up leadership positions and challenging themselves. Brenda Mulinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, global vaccine inequity persists amid a spike in new COVID-19 variants. We'll be right back.
Next on Straight Talk Africa, we'll take an in-depth look at the youth-led social uprisings we've seen across Africa in recent years. As young people take to the streets and social media to demand change, we ask, have they been effective? And what have the mass uprisings really accomplished? Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. More than 1 year after the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is still struggling to contain the virus despite the availability of several vaccines for prevention. Health experts say the challenge of new variants is exacerbated by the unequal access to COVID vaccine worldwide. Africa 54 health correspondent Linor Mudu has our report.
Andrew Ngwenya sits outside his home in a working-class township in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, wondering how to protect himself and his family from COVID-19. Ngwenya and his wife Diegma had visited a hospital that had spare doses of COVID vaccines. Hours later, the Ngwenyas, parents of 4 children, were sent home, still desperate for immunization.
Even you are interested in a jab, you can't stand that. Because I've been there like sometime around 8 at Parirenyatu, up to 12. Only maybe a few, maybe 30 people were saved.
Meanwhile, in Canada, it is a different reality for mother of 3, Amanda Wood. When the country began immunizing children aged 12 and over, Wood and her husband did not hesitate to vaccinate the family.
I am feeling life is going back to normal, and just being able to see family and friends is so important, and it's just making it that much more real.
The stories of the Ngwenya and Wood families reflect a reality. Between some who can easily access COVID-19 jabs in developed nations thanks to money and strong health infrastructures, and others who are struggling to get vaccinated in low and middle income countries due to the lack of resources. In Zimbabwe, only about 9% of the population has received 1 dose of coronavirus vaccine.
I was here as early as 3 a.m. I was on number 5. Now it's almost 8 a.m. They are telling us there's no first vaccine. It hasn't arrived.
The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that less than 2% of the continent's population of 1.3 billion have received at least 1 shot of the COVID vaccine. Experts say Canada has among the world's highest COVID-19 vaccination rate, with nearly 70% of its adult population receiving at least 1 dose.
There's definitely a huge inequality in our world, and I think that this pandemic really shone the light on it and showed us that the countries that have access to the vaccination and can start to go back to a normal life, whereas a lot of the poorer countries don't have that luxury, and it's really unfortunate. I'm glad that Canada did step up and donate some of our vaccinations.
Canada, along with the United States and Japan, are 3 of about 10 countries pledging to donate about 1 billion doses of COVID vaccines to low and middle income countries through the COVAX platform. The World Health Organization and its partners established the initiative last year to ensure equitable access to COVID vaccines, with richer countries subsidizing costs for poorer nations. But the WHO says 11 billion doses are needed to protect the world. Linor Mudu, VOA News, Washington.
The number of known deaths from COVID-19 has passed 4 million, according to Johns Hopkins University, which is tracking both cases and deaths. In the past 100 years, there have been flu and cholera epidemics, the AIDS epidemic, and multiple other diseases around the world. VOA's Carol Pearson says the latest research shows many epidemics either don't have to happen or can be contained.
As some countries prepare for yet another wave of the coronavirus, doctors in countries with a surplus of vaccines are begging people to get vaccinated.
I'm Dr. Michael Bolding. I've been working our COVID unit for the last 16 months. I get asked on a daily basis now, what our COVID unit looks like.
Boulding says he is now seeing very sick, unvaccinated patients in their 20s and 30s.
With no comorbid conditions, ending up on ventilators, BiPAP, high flow oxygen, and extremely sick, sicker than at any time during this pandemic.
With a vaccine, severe illness and death from COVID-19 can be avoided.
We're calling for a global goal of 717, 7 days to detect an outbreak, 1 day to notify an outbreak, and 7 days to mount an effective response.
VOA interviewed Amanda McClelland at a summit on disease prevention and control. She says it's possible to prevent epidemics and cites Uganda as an example. Uganda stopped a recent Ebola outbreak at its border with the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Uganda responded to the risk and mobilized their communities, mobilized their health systems to strengthen surveillance along the border, and was able to detect Ebola cases and care for those patients effectively, and they didn't have an Ebola outbreak.
In fact, a study released in April by Resolve to Save Lives that's called Epidemics That Didn't Happen included multiple examples of situations where countries avoided or stopped epidemics. Here's another example. In 2014, Nigeria stopped an Ebola outbreak, and in 2016, Brazil prevented a yellow fever epidemic from taking hold. In both cases, health officials implemented coordinated response activities, effective communication, and dedicated leadership. McClelland says the key is good leadership and building trust at the community level.
You can't just come when something bad happens. You have to be there all of the time. You have to meet the communities where they are and address their everyday health needs, and that builds trust.
McClelland says trust, good journalism, and a strong civil society help communities push back against disinformation and politicizing diseases, vaccines, and treatments. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
The Biden administration on Tuesday will announce a new push to expand business ties between the U.S. companies and Africa, with a focus on building needed digital, health, and physical infrastructure on the continent, according to a senior U.S. official. U.S. industry executives welcome the interest, but say dollar flows will lag until the Biden administration wraps up its lengthy review of Trump administration trade measures and sets a clear policy on investments in liquefied natural gas. Dana Banks, Senior Director for Africa at the White House National Security Council, will kick off a U.S.-Africa Business Summit with a pledge to reimagine and revive Prosper Africa, an initiative unveiled by the Trump administration in 2018. Hearings are ongoing Tuesday in the House of Representatives for a select committee investigating the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. VOA Steve Reddish explains the committee's work and the political controversy surrounding it.
Law enforcement officers who defended the U.S. Capitol will be the first to testify in front of the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on Congress's home. But the committee's existence is only widening the political split between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats originally proposed an independent commission based on the success of the commission that delivered a widely accepted investigation into the 2001 9/11 terrorist attacks on the U.S.
The commission was going to be a body with much more clout.
Norm Ornstein is a political scientist with the American Enterprise Institute. He said an independent commission would have the full force of Congress and the White House behind it.
It would have had a wider range of members and very possibly would have been able to get more muscle in terms of its ability to get witnesses and the important information out there.
Despite getting agreement on nearly all their demands, Senate Republicans blocked a vote for an independent commission in late May.
I urge my colleagues to vote aye.
Democratic Speaker of the House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi then proposed a select committee to investigate. Republicans accused Democrats of wanting a predetermined outcome.
Making sure that it never happens again requires a fully bipartisan solution, not a partisan committee, rigged from the start.
Along with 7 Democrats, Pelosi appointed Republican Liz Cheney, who was ousted from her party's leadership post because of her open defiance of the false narrative touted by President Trump that the 2020 election was stolen from him.
Some of the other Republicans who have been outspoken on this are under enormous pressure from within their own party not to participate. It takes a great deal of courage, which Liz Cheney has shown, to go against your party and your party leader.
As the minority party leader, Republican Kevin McCarthy was allowed 5 committee selections. Pelosi rejected 2 of them, Jim Jordan of Ohio and Jim Banks of Indiana.
They have made statements and taken actions that I think would impact the integrity of the commission, of the committee, the work of the committee.
Pelosi has created a sham process. Unless Speaker Pelosi reverses course and seats all 5 Republicans, we will not participate.
McCarthy's January 6th phone call to then-President Trump, purportedly imploring the president to call off his supporters attacking the Capitol, could become part of the committee's probe.
He's trying to give himself cover for saying, this is not a legitimate committee, so I'm not going to cooperate.
Pelosi appointed a 2nd Republican to the panel. Adam Kinzinger and Cheney were the only Republicans to vote with Democrats to create the committee to investigate the attack. Steve Reddish, VOA News, Washington.
A storm off Japan's east coast threatened the Tokyo Olympics Tuesday, though not the devastating winds and rain initially feared in the host city. Wind and rain sweeping Tokyo Bay delayed the start of the women's triathlon before Flora Duffy snagged Bermuda's first ever Olympic gold medal. The Japanese say not to worry. In U.S. terms, the weather was just a mild grade tropical storm. The Japanese Meteorological Agency says the storm headed northwest over the Pacific Ocean east of Japan. The Japanese army says it was monitoring the situation, ready to deploy its fast force disaster troops if needed. South of Tokyo, authorities warned residents to prepare for more heavy rain after 21 people died in mudslides from torrential rains earlier this month. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.